Hey everyone, I'm Jackie Travis, and I am going to tell you about a new type of AI that's being developed at University of Washington that will allow smart speakers to detect agonal breathing patterns that might precede cardiac arrest. And this is important because according to the American Heart Association, there are 475,000 people who die of cardiac arrest in any given year, and 350,000 of those actually take place outside of a hospital setting, and more specifically 69.5% of them take place in the home. And unfortunately, with cardiac arrest outside the hospital, they have a 90% mortality rate. And if they are able to get the help that they need immediately, then the odds of survival go up 2 to 3 times. But unfortunately, only 46% of those victims get the help they need. So with this new AI and detecting agonal breathing with a smart speaker, it could be very beneficial in saving tens of thousands of lives. So, what the research team did to gather examples of agonal breathing for the smart speaker to identify is they took recordings of actual 911 calls within the King County area, and in these recordings they were specifically confirmed to be cardiac arrest cases, and the caller had actually held the phone up to the mouth of the person in cardiac arrest so that the 911 dispatcher could hear their breathing and determine whether it was agonal and if they needed CPR. So they got those audio clips and they introduced them to the smart speaker at varying distances up to 20 feet away from the smart speaker so that it could detect them from a distance. And they also added in different types of ambient noise, like noise from the street, kids running around, people talking, different things that people listen to when they sleep, like podcasts, even AC units, white noise, just stuff like that to help filter all that stuff out. And in order to help the smart speaker identify a regular breathing pattern from an agonal breathing pattern, they had a group of volunteers who audio recorded their own breathing patterns at night, and they were actually able to capture just regular breathing patterns, obstructive sleep apnea, and snoring. So once all of this was compiled and put to the test, the smart speakers were actually able to identify agonal breathing patterns 97% of the time. And there was only a 0.22% rate of false positives. And then the smart speaker inaccurately identified a regular breathing pattern as an agonal breathing pattern 0.14% of the time. But when they added a frequency filter to this experiment where there was one episode of agonal breathing detected and then another one more than 10 seconds later, the false positive rate essentially went down to 0%. So if the smart speaker identifies agonal breathing, it will alert whoever is around that somebody needs CPR. And if there is no response to that, then the smart speaker calls 911. So there are definitely still some kinks to work out with this, like actually decreasing the rate of false positives, because even though it's 0.22% when we're talking about, hundreds of thousands of potential cases, 0.22% is, over 500 times of being unnecessarily alarmed, not only for the loved ones, but also for EMS. And with anything related to AI in healthcare, there's always going to be a concern for, privacy and HIPAA. But one of the other things that they're concerned about is how to actually activate the smart speaker, because a lot of times they require you to intentionally activate them by saying, "Hey Siri" or "Alexa, do this." But even though there are still some kinks to work out and it's not a perfect system yet, this is a really important use of technology in the healthcare field when we are talking about, potentially saving tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of lives. So this will be something that is very useful for a lot of people, and especially in what are more unmonitored type of settings, like in a long-term care facility, or if somebody is more at risk for cardiac arrest, like in the event of a potential opioid overdose where they go into respiratory arrest and then cardiac arrest. It could really save a lot of lives and be really beneficial for a lot of people. So I'm typically a little bit wary of AI just because it can be used for so many different things, but I feel like this is a really good example of how it could be used for good in the healthcare field and to save a lot of people. So I thought it was really interesting. Hope you did too. Thanks.